Hello, my name is Ormes and welcome to my CMPPP screencast. This screencast is for the purpose of showing the current state of my CMPPP project and to discuss my choices regarding the project and future timeline of the project. For this project, I wanted to explore how to translate the lore and narrative from the book The Strange Affair of Spring-Heeled Jack into a 3D environment that takes visual inspiration from the game Assassin's Creed Syndicate. I chose this book because the idea of a steampunk London was something I had not done before, and the lore and the way the lore could be shown throughout the environment via posters and graffiti really interested me, as I'm used to creating clean and pristine environments. I also wanted to play with how to create emotion within the environment, such as tension, via trying different things with the atmosphere, such as lighting effects. The rationale for my project was to learn how to translate lore and narrative from one form of media to another. In this case, it would be translating the lore and narrative from the book to a 3D environment that you could hopefully explore. I wanted to try this out because I wanted to see how it would work with the limitations of environment design, such as the low poly modeling and needing to have like a feel to the environment so it didn't just feel empty and flat. I also wanted to explore how I could get across the atmosphere of the book, which was a London that was thrown into chaos with political factions vying for control, while there's a menace stalking through the smog-covered streets. I also wanted to use this project as a way of developing skills that I hadn't currently tried, or that I've tried somewhat in the previous modules that I've had but I haven't done too well with, to see if I could polish them further, such as I wanted to increase my ability to add narrative to an environment as well as ambience, since a lot of my environments are either more ArcViz themed or they don't really have a story to them that you could ascertain through looking through the environment. I also wanted to try out stuff such as trim sheets that I'd used in a previous model, and to really try and polish my high poly to low poly modeling for key items. I also really wanted to try a dynamically lit environment, since I'd tried this previously and I didn't have much luck with it, and the results weren't that great. I also wanted to kind of mix this in with post-process effects for the fog to really kind of bring that ambient, smoggy London feel to the project. I first began the project by storyboarding and by putting together a mood board of different bits and pieces that I thought would be helpful for me to look at, such as different types of windows and doors, and how buildings from the Victorian era generally look and what sort of materials that they used, and how I could use this as a basis for modelling the pieces, because I've wanted to go for a more modular design with my 3D modelling, so that it would allow me to reuse elements so I wouldn't have to model as many. After this, I took to Hack and Plan to plan out my project. I wanted to plan out how many sort of models I'd be looking at, how many sort of sets for the buildings. I also wanted to drum up some ideas for myself of how I could push the project further if I had the time, such as lighting, which I thought would be an interesting thing to try and do with the dynamic lighting in the environment. I also wanted to kind of figure out how much I would have to do before the deadline, and to see whether I needed to trim any ideas or whether there was more that I could possibly fit in to push my environment further. The next step for me was to actually start 3D modelling the parts. I chose to go for a modular workflow because I felt that this would help me in terms of how much modelling I would have to do, instead of modelling complete buildings and then popping them in and then having to model other unique buildings on top of this. I ended up making quite a few sets for buildings. There was about 5 sets in all for different styles, and the flooring as well as the road was all made modular as well. And I used a spline technique that I found on YouTube in order to be able to drag out how many of the sidewalks and the road segments that I needed in order to fit an entire road, so I could change this at any point. From that point, I then went and UV mapped, and I ID mapped as well, so that it would allow me to make some more custom textures, but also utilize tiling textures so that I could minimize the amount of materials needed for the entire project by reusing some over. I also started looking at how I could start to include some of the lore and narrative of the book into the environment, and so far I've started adding some of the posters that are found within the book into the actual environment themselves, such as the velocipedes poster and the broomcats poster, which are unique to the book. I also mixed this up with some other classic Victorian posters that I found while researching, so that I could get an idea of, one, how the posters would look back then so I could make it similar, and two, so that they don't look out of place as being the only posters in the world. So far, I feel for my project, I feel that it's gone quite well. I'm not as far ahead as I would have liked to have been at this point in the project, but I am immensely pleased with the quality of the work that I've done. I feel that it really kind of has that polish that Assassin's Creed has, though I do think I could push it quite a bit further. And I like how it's looking with adding in the narrative segments into it, such as the posters. And overall, I think with the time that I've got left, I will be able to produce the rest of the buildings that I want to produce, add in some additional lampposts. I was thinking bollards and probably some signs to start getting an idea of, like, oh, these are shops, those are houses, sort of things that you would see down a Victorian street. As you can see, this is my current environment as it currently looks, with the post-process fog, some lampposts with lights in, and some of the buildings in. I've also worked hard at the groundwork so that I could start getting a real layout of the city. There are still some issues with the post-process effects, such as a light over the top of the buildings, but I'm hoping to fix this quite soon. As you can see, I've also started laying out some posters in the environment to kind of bring in that narrative feel. I went researching to see what sort of posters they'd have, and those that I found I emulated to try and bring the aesthetic feel to the environment. There's still quite a lot to do. I've planned to light up some of the buildings so that they all aren't dark inside. And once this is done, I really feel that this will help. I've also started looking at text decals to kind of show which are shops and which are just home buildings or a non-commercial building. My plan for completion is to, as I said, to push the environment as far as I can in terms of texturing, detail. I'll be looking at using some decal maps to kind of break up some of the brickwork so it doesn't look quite so clean. I also want to add in some more scenery props and definitely add some more narrative-based stuff. And if possible, I really do want to add the lightning, because I feel that the flashes of light coupled with the flickering lampposts that I've got will really bring across the tension in the atmosphere that I really want to portray for this. And if I could potentially push it further, I would like to, as a stretch goal, get some additional things in there, like maybe something like a character, but that's very, very unlikely at this point in time. But this is the sort of things that I'm aiming for. Here are a couple polished fly-throughs of the environment as it stands so far.